The hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of the tires against the pavement were the only sounds accompanying me on that fateful night. The job was a long haul, a solitary trek across states to deliver a trailer full of electronics. It was the kind of journey I had made countless times before, each one blending into the next in an endless loop of highways and rest stops. But this trip was destined to be different. As us gave way to the deep blue of the night, a weather alert crackled through the radio, warning of an unexpected snowstorm sweeping across the region. I glanced at the darkening sky, noting the heavy clouds rolling in, and tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Snow wasn't uncommon this time of year, but I was hopeful I could outrun the worst of it. The first flakes began to fall, light and sporadic, dancing in the glow of the headlights before settling on the windshield. I switched on the wipers, maintaining a steady pace as the snow grew heavier, the world outside transforming into a blur of white. It wasn't long before the road ahead was shrouded in a thick curtain of snow, visibility dropping to just a few feet in front of the truck. Realizing the danger of pressing on, I decided to find the nearest truck stop to wait out the storm. The map on my phone showed one only a few miles ahead, a beacon of safety in the growing chaos, but faded other plans. As I navigated through the whiteout, a pair of headlights emerged from the gloom behind me. At first, I paid them no mind, focusing instead on the treacherous road ahead. However, it quickly became apparent that this vehicle was not simply passing through. It shadowed me closely, mirroring my every turn and speed adjustment. In the lonely expanse of the storm-racked highway, this game of cat and mouse sent a shiver of unease down my spine. The vehicle, a nondescript and battered by the elements, finally pulled alongside me, through the snow and wind. I could barely make out the figure of the passenger, wildly gesticulating and shouting something I couldn't hear over the howl of the storm. They pointed insistently towards the rear of my truck, their expressions fraught with urgency. In that moment, my mind raced with possibilities. Was there really something wrong with my truck? Or was this some sort of trap? Despite my reservations, the seed of doubt planted by their frantic warnings was enough to gnaw at my resolve. I thought of the cargo I was carrying, the responsibility I had to ensure its safe delivery. The possibility of a mechanical failure, however remote, couldn't be ignored. It was this thought that ultimately swayed me, leading to the decision I would soon deeply regret. Pulling over onto the shoulder, the crunch of snow under the tires sounding unnervingly loud in the silence. I prepared to exit the cab. The sedan had stopped a short distance ahead, its occupants now stepping out into the swirling snow, their figures blurred shadows against the stark white backdrop. As I opened the door and stepped out into the cold, the wind biting through my jacket, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. Little did I know that intuition was more accurate than I could have imagined, and I was about to find myself in a situation far more dangerous than any storm. Stepping out into the blizzard was like entering another world. The biting cold immediately lashed against my skin, the wind howling around me as if to chastise my decision. The snow, falling in thick, relentless sheets, reduced my visibility to mere feet. As I rounded the corner of my truck, the headlights from the sedan cast long, eerie shadows across the snow, giving the scene an otherworldly glow. The two figures from the car stood watching, their bodies rigid against the storm, as if they were carved from ice. Their faces were obscured by the darkness and their winter gear, adding to the growing sense of unease that knotted in my stomach. I bent down to inspect the tires, my hands trembling not just from the cold but from a growing apprehension. The tires looked intact, the treads filled with snow but otherwise as they should be. I straightened up, confusion swirling in my mind alongside the blizzard. That's when I felt a sudden, forceful blow to the back of my head that sent me sprawling forward into the snow. Dazed, I barely registered the sound of my own grunt as I hit the ground, the snow cushioning my fall but doing nothing to soften the shock of the trail. I tried to rise, but another blow, this time to my side, knocked the wind out of me, pinning me down into the icy embrace of the snow. Through the haze of pain and disbelief, I saw one of the figures sprinting towards the cab of my truck, his movements swift and sure against the howling wind. The other stood over me, a dark silhouette against the storm, before turning and dashing back towards the sedan. Panic and adrenaline surged through me, propelling me to my feet despite the pain. I stumbled towards the truck, my shouts lost to the wind, as I watched the thief climb into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a sound that was now a harbinger of loss and violation. With a sense of desperation, I reached the cab just as the truck began to move, the rear wheels spinning in the snow before finding traction. The door was slammed shut, the lock clicking just as my fingers brushed against the handle. The truck, my truck, pulled away, leaving me standing in a cloud of exhaust and snow, the cold seeping into my bones. The sedan was already disappearing into the storm, its tail lights glowing faintly before being swallowed by the night. I was left alone, the silence of the blizzard enveloping me once more, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. As the snow continued to fall, covering my tracks, and I feared any evidence of the crime, a profound sense of vulnerability overtook me. I was miles from anywhere, my means of communication, and shelter stolen along with the truck. The journey back to civilization was a blur of determination and survival. The police, when I finally reached them, listened with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. The tracks had been covered by the snow, the identities of the thieves hidden by the storm. I had become another statistic in a growing list of highway robberies, a cautionary tale of the dangers lurking on remote roads. In the aftermath, I struggled with feelings of guilt and anger, replaying the events over in my mind, wondering what I could have done differently. The loss of the truck was a financial blow, but the loss of trust, the feeling of security, that was far harder to quantify. The open road, once a place of freedom and solitude, now held a shadow of caution and fear. It was a lesson learned in the harshest way possible, in the cold heart of a winter storm. I started using a popular ride-sharing app to make some extra money during my final year of college. The flexibility was perfect for my hectic schedule, and for the most part, it was uneventful until one peculiar night that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. It was a chilly Friday evening, and I was looking forward to a busy night. Students and locals alike were out and about, making it an ideal time to earn some extra cash. My night was going smoothly, hopping from one ride request to the next, when I received a pickup request from a location on the outskirts of town, a place I had never been to before. As I navigated the quiet, winding roads leading to the destination, I couldn't help but notice the lack of street lighting, which made the journey eerily dark. The GPS led me to a narrow, gravel road that seemed barely used. Towering trees on either side made it feel like I was entering another world. I reassured myself that it was just another pickup, but the further I drove, the more I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Finally, I arrived at a decrepit mansion that looked like it hadn't seen occupants for decades. The request was from someone named Alex, who needed a ride to the city center. The mansion stood silent, with broken windows and an overgrown garden. I hesitated but decided to proceed, rationalizing that maybe it was a dare or some adventurous tourist wanting a ride back to civilization. I sent a message through the app to let Alex know I had arrived and waited. The mansion remained dark and still, with no sign of movement inside. Just as I was about to cancel the ride and leave, the front door creaked open, revealing a dark figure silhouetted against the dim light inside. "Alex," I called out, trying to hide the tremble in my voice. "Yes," came a faint reply. The figure stepped forward, and I could barely make out the features of a young man, looking disheveled but otherwise normal. As we drove back towards the city, Alex was quiet, offering short answers to my attempts at conversation. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off, but I chalked it up to the creepy pickup location. Upon dropping Alex off in a well-lit area of the city, he thanked me and quickly disappeared into the night. I let out a sigh of relief and was ready to call it a night when my phone pinged with a new message. It was from Alex, or so I thought, but the message was cryptic. "Thank you for tonight. You don't know how much you've helped me." Confused, I tried to respond, only to find that the user account had been deleted. My confusion turned to horror the next day when I learned that the mansion I had visited was infamous in local lore. It had been abandoned for years after a tragic event and was rumored to be haunted. Locals avoided it, especially at night. The realization that Alex might not have been who or what he seemed sent chills down my spine. Had I unknowingly helped his spirit find peace? Or was it something more sinister? I'll never know for sure, but I do know one thing: I never accepted a pickup from that location again. And the memory of that night lingers, a ghostly reminder of the unknown. At 24, I found myself working late nights at a local diner, a stone's throw away from a university campus. The place was a mix of vintage Americana and student graffiti, a charm that attracted an eclectic crowd. My colleague, Lily, and I often manned the fort, serving everything from greasy burgers to strong coffee that could wake the dead. It was a routine job, but I enjoyed the simplicity and the stories each patron carried with them. One particular Thursday night, as autumn winds began to stir, the diner was quieter than usual. With midterms around the corner, our usual student clientele was buried under textbooks. Around midnight, a man walked in, his presence immediately filling the room with a palpable tension. He was dressed in a nondescript jacket and jeans, but it was his eyes, cold and calculating, that caught my attention. He chose a booth in the corner, far from the entrance but with a clear view of the entire diner. Lily, always the more outgoing of us, approached him with a menu, but he waved it off, ordering only a cup of coffee. His voice was calm, almost too calm, with a certain deliberateness to it. I watched from behind the counter, an uneasy feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. The man spent the next hour nursing the single cup of coffee, his gaze never leaving the pages of the worn notebook he wrote in. Occasionally, he would stop, look up, and survey the diner, his eyes lingering a moment too long on the front door. This routine continued until the bell above the door jingled, announcing the arrival of another customer, a young woman who seemed lost in thought. She ordered a late-night breakfast and chose a seat not far from the mysterious man. I noticed him glance up, a slight change in his demeanor as he watched her settle in. Something about the way he watched her made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to fatigue and an overactive imagination. As the night progressed, the diner emptied out until only the man, the woman, and a few of us remained. It was then that things took an unexpected turn. The man stood up, his movements deliberate, and made his way to the woman's table. He spoke to her in hushed tones, too low for me or Lily to catch. The woman's reaction was immediate. Her body tensed, and her eyes widened in fear. Without thinking, I stepped out from behind the counter, Lily at my heels, asking if everything was okay. The man turned, his gaze sharp, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flash of anger, but as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by a polite smile. He assured us everything was fine, just a misunderstanding between old friends. The woman, however, told a different story with her eyes. She was scared, her hands trembling as she gathered her things. Lily offered to call her a cab while I watched the man return to his booth, gather his belongings, and leave a generous tip on the table before walking out into the night. After the woman left in a cab, and the diner's lights were dimmed, Lily and I couldn't shake off the unease that had settled over us. We wondered if we had just witnessed a dangerous situation, or if it was merely the misinterpretation of a private conversation. That night stayed with me, a vivid reminder of the thin line between the ordinary and the unknown. The man never returned, and the woman remained a stranger, her story untold. Yet, the memory of their encounter lingers, a ghostly imprint of what could have been. A reminder that not all is as it seems in the quiet hours of the night at a diner that serves as a crossroads for the many lives that pass through its doors.